All right, fellas, what's going on? Welcome in. You know what it is. It's college football week 5. We have a full slate of games on the board. Could not be a better time of year. It is fall. The pumpkin spice is out. Football is in the air. NFL's here. But more importantly, college football is here. It's perfect. It's no longer 113 degrees outside. It's no longer miserable. Everything is wonderful. Everything is happy. Kevin, this is the best time of the year, right?
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. Week 5, really nice slate. So I think there's a lot of great options to go with this week.
Yeah, I assume you're enthused about the pumpkin spice is why you're so excited, right?
I am. It's a good time of year.
All right. So let's go ahead and get started. It's a 13 game slate. As always, before we get started, Daily Bread Media. Make sure you're following the lovely people here. Daily Bread Media on YouTube, Daily Bread Media on Twitter. Me and Kevin, we go every week. We discuss every single team. I think this week we were kind of talking, Kevin. It's there's some pretty obvious plays, like especially at the wide receiver position.
Yep.
So, I mean, we're going to go team by team as we always do, because if you're looking to get a takedown, you're looking to win tournaments, you just need to know every player on every team, really, because you're missing something if you're not. But it's fairly obvious. Like, I'm going to point out the plays that you should be playing, and the player pool for me is going to probably be smaller. I mean, certainly at one position, like certainly at wide receiver, but I think quarterback and running back is where we're probably going to need to find out where the gems are in this one.
Yep, agreed.
Another thing we're going to point out, there is Hurricane Ian happening, so a lot of these games will be affected by weather. We don't have the latest information. You're going to have to check every day. It's Thursday night as we're recording this. You're going to have to watch before kickoff because it's going to heavily impact some of these games. And you can't be playing a player in a lineup you're expecting to do great and then wake up and be surprised that there's 25-mile-an-hour winds, because you shouldn't be shocked. All right, let's go ahead and get started here. We have Kentucky is going against Ole Miss. Kentucky has a very high ranking, leaving a lot of people to think that this is a pretty great team. But I don't know. They haven't really been playing all that great, to be honest with you, Kevin. What are we thinking here for Kentucky? They're going against an Ole Miss team that's entirely new. Their whole defense was pretty much revamped in the transfer portal, but they are playing pretty well. So are you believing in the hype with the Ole Miss defense? Or are you thinking they're going to revert to the old Ole Miss defense? What's going on with Kentucky? Hard one to read here.
Yeah, I actually think this is going to be a better regular game than it is a fantasy game. I don't like a ton of options on the Kentucky side. Levis has been decent. His price isn't bad. But he doesn't excite me. Chris Rodriguez is coming back this week. He's a little too expensive for my taste because I just don't know what he's going to do, as far as carry wise. And receiver wise, they have a couple good options in Robinson, Key, who had a stinker last week. And then there's the freshman, but overall they don't do a ton for me. So I'm probably going to have not much exposure actually on the Kentucky side. I have a little bit of interest on the Ole Miss side, but not much on Kentucky.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm not crazy on any of these plays. I think Key and Brown, so they're both freshmen, so they did a really good job with this recruiting class, and I like the Kentucky program. But there's just not a lot doing for me here. I think Tavion Robinson at 5.8K, it's quite clear they're wanting him to fill the Wandale role. I mean, again, they went in the transfer portal, got a little slot guy who returns kicks, whose last name is Robinson. So it's quite clear what they're trying to do there. I just don't like Wandale Robinson was a special player, just flat out. And the offense just isn't quite as good as it was last year. So he's a poor man's version, but it's a really good price on Tavion. So I wouldn't hate you getting there. Chris Rodriguez at 6K. I mean, I just think the offense isn't doing well enough. They're ranking 79th in rush blocking per PFF. They're 123rd in rush PPA, 128th in rush explosiveness. They're just not doing that well. And going against an Ole Miss defense that's been playing pretty well, 9th against rushing explosiveness, 17th in rush PPA. I just don't really see why you would get there. It is worth pointing out Tavion Robinson, his average depth of target is only 4.9. So they're just throwing it to him at the line of scrimmage for the most part. So 23 targets on the year. Yes, that's a decent amount, but is it enough when it's only going 5 yards downfield? That kind of leads me to believe it's more of a cash play. But he is a dynamic player, and Will Levis does throw the ball far. So in case they do an out and up or something, he could break a big one, but really not that intriguing to me. All right, let's turn it over to Ole Miss. We have Jackson Dart, 7.7K. I do like Jackson Dart as a player, but not really sure that price is warranted at all. The big news here is Zach Evans came out of the game last week, and Lane Kiffin's not very good with injury updates. He said he was out with a medical issue. I mean, yeah, we assume so, Lane Kiffin. We assume he wasn't out because he was hungry. It wasn't the hunger issue. It wasn't. I don't know, but he's not giving any updates. So that one is really frustrating. You have Quinshad Judkins, the star freshman. This kid looks like an absolute stud. I love this guy. Hopefully you played him when he was 3.5K and we recommended him because he's now 5K going against Kentucky. And I assume we aren't playing the wide receivers here, so I don't really feel the need to mention them, although Jonathan Mingo is their wide receiver 1. Malik Heath is having a decent season at 4K. And then Michael Trigg, the tight end, is still all the way down at 3.4K because, folks, and you're going to hear me mention this a lot, the DraftKings algorithm is pretty broken in some spots. It's not broken overall, but tight ends, they can't figure out tight ends in college football, and they can't figure out teams that want to throw the ball a lot, which we'll talk about later. Certain teams like Purdue and Mississippi State. Okay, what are you looking at here for Ole Miss?
I don't want any of the quarterback start. Ole Miss runs the ball like 66% of the time. So, Evans, his price is pretty high, and who knows if he's going to play. And even when he has been playing, they're in a 50-50 split. Judkins is getting a ton of carries. He just looks like the better back right now. So for 5K, he's absolutely in play. Kentucky's D is ranked pretty good, but they haven't really played anybody great. So I think Ole Miss is a really good running team. So I think Judkins at 5K is a really good play.
Yeah, I don't hate it at all. I think if you get news on Evans, I think that could really sway the slate. Like if Evans doesn't play, I mean, Judkins is going to be hard to miss. This Ole Miss team, I shouted it out at the beginning of the year. I said I think they're going to run the ball a lot because Lane Kiffin, we talked about it, right, Kevin? We said that he caters his offense to what they're good at, and lately he's gotten this reputation as an aired out kind of guy. But I mean, smart offensive minds cater their attack towards what they do best, and this team is good at running the ball. Kentucky's defense has been okay. They have been pretty good against the rush. They're 6th in success rate against the run, but again, they've played nobody, and they've given up a lot of explosive rush plays. They're ranked 107th in explosive runs. So if Judkins breaks 1 or 2, if he gets 25 carries, if Evans is out, I certainly think that could get you there. Are you going to get to Trigg at all at 3.4K?
I'm not. There's better options at wide receiver in other games that I'd be more in tune to play.
Definitely agree with you, but the price is insane. But yeah, I agree. All right, moving on. We have Texas Tech versus Kansas State. I have the total pulled up here. Give me a second, Kevin. All right, total is 57.5. Kansas State is favored by 7 after that walloping of Oklahoma. That was pretty awesome. I don't know what it is with them in Oklahoma, but it's every year I've watched the same game, except this year there was more touchdowns. What are we thinking here? Let's look at the Texas Tech side first.
They're going to score points, but I don't have a ton of interest. Honestly, to me, the best play on Texas Tech is Miles Price at 5.4. I think he had something like 17 targets last week. He had 13 catches. He only had 98 yards, but they're making the effort to get him the ball. So, earlier in the year, he wasn't getting the ball and people were worried. And I think it's certainly coming around. So at 5.4, I think Miles Price is a great play. And again, kind of what we talked about, right? In that receiver range, you don't really need to pay up this week. So that would be my interest.
Yeah, you really can play whoever you want at wide receiver. And there's some really good ones, cheap price. I'm kind of thinking Price might even get overlooked a little bit this week because there's a MINN price guy we'll talk about. There's Charlie Jones.
Yep.
There's a chance Miles Price isn't even all that high owned. And again, I'm going to provide context so people understand the Miles Price play. It's the Kitley offense. It's the slot role. Miles Price is the most experienced wide receiver on the team. He's the best wide receiver on the team. He fits the slot role that Jareth Stearns was in last year for Kitley's offense at Western Kentucky when he had 1,900 receiving yards, and he had 17 targets last week in a competitive game where they beat Texas. So I don't really know what people want to see. People were down on Price because he was out with a back injury, and they said he's not even playing full snaps. And that's why you have to be wary of these people who just stare at snap counts and PFF grades. They don't watch the games. They don't know what the hell they're talking about. Miles Price is a good player. He's leading the team in targets. He had 17 last year. He was injured and still came back and caught a touchdown, and people freaked out. So that's my spiel on Miles Price. I think he's fine. Overall, this game environment is pretty interesting because both teams, Well, we know Texas Tech wants to run a ton of plays. They ran 100 plays last week
Yeah.
against Oklahoma, which was insane. And then Kansas State, I can't really figure out what's going on with them. They said they wanted to run a fast tempo. They did not to start the year. And then last week, they kind of did. They ran 83 plays against Oklahoma, mainly because Oklahoma just really couldn't get off the field and couldn't stop the rush. But I don't know. They had 28 first downs against Oklahoma. You can't do that unless you're a pretty good rushing attack. Texas Tech has been pretty good against Russia. We'll see like who right when I'm trying to think of the game flow, who can kind of possess the ball. I think either side you can make a case. I'm kind of thinking Miles Price is probably the way to go. Jaron Bradley, like I really have been going to this guy. I played him a lot last week, and he's just put up a number of stinkers in a row. But they do like throwing in the ball downfield. I'm not sure I can get there. He is still tied with Miles Price with 32 targets on the year. So I guess you could get there. Nehemiah Martinez, I did want to shout him out because he has 19 targets on the season. And for some reason, they priced him as MINN priced. So that's another example of the algorithm being broken. So if you wanted to get to Nehemiah, I really wouldn't hate you, especially if you're going to play the hurricane angle on the other MINN price guy for Wake Forest. We're going to talk about later. All right, Kevin, let's look at Texas or Kansas State. Like I said, just a prolific offensive performance last week. They are 9-1 in their last 10 games against Texas Tech, and they're a 7-point favorite here. Do you have any interest on their side?
Yeah, so I think a lot of people are going to be on Adrian Martinez because he had 4 rushing touchdowns last week, and I just don't like the guy. Obviously, I'm a Nebraska fan. 4 years I saw him, and he looked the best he's probably looked in the past 5 years last week. But if he doesn't run, if he doesn't score those rushing touchdowns, he really doesn't bring much value to the table. So my interest on Kansas State's Deuce Vaughn. Deuce is their man. Last week he didn't get the touchdowns, right? Adrian Martinez vultured those touchdowns. Good chance that we get a positive regression, and Deuce Vaughn gets 2 of those touchdowns this week. So I'll have a lot of Deuce for sure.
I don't hate that at all. I mean, what is there to hate about this workload? And he's a dynamic receiving threat. We said 8 receptions against Tulane in a game that they lost, right? So no matter what the game script is here, there's going to be a lot of plays. Yep. Texas Tech, again, they've been pretty good defensively, but I don't really know how much to trust it. They're 27th in rush PPA. So they're decent against the rush. They're pretty good at the line of scrimmage. I think they're a little bit more vulnerable through the pass, which I don't really think Kansas State's going to burn you there. You're right. They're 114th in passing explosiveness against. So it's kind of a weird matchup. And then when you look at the other side, Kansas State is really good at defending the pass. They rank 16th in passing success rate against. But I don't know, when you're going against the Zach Kittley offense for 4 quarters, can you really hold them down? So I think it's a tough game to call. I think if you want to choose one of those options we talk about, Deuce Vaughn or Miles Price, the top 2, wouldn't hate it at all. All right, let's move on. Oklahoma versus TCU. Oklahoma obviously coming off that upset loss. TCU shutted them out against SMU last week. That was pretty nice. TCU is a weird team. So let's start with that. These teams are kind of in a weird spot because TCU has been winning games. They haven't really been looking great. They haven't been winning games like people expected, right? Sonny Dykes airing the ball out. Quentin Johnson's been a non-factor, but they've been winning games. Oklahoma, on the other hand, they've been putting up good numbers. Their offense looks great, but then they got blown out by Kansas State. Do you have a good read on this one, Kevin? How are you reading this game?
I mean, I would think Oklahoma, puts up a bunch of points, and I think Gabriel obviously will have a big game. I like the way Eric Gray's coming on, right? He's actually showing kind of what he showed when he was at Tennessee, and everybody got all excited when he transferred to Oklahoma. So I do like Eric Gray. I can't get there on Marvin Mims. The price is just too high, especially this week with wide receivers. There's no reason to pay up for him. TCU is really hard to figure out. Dugan is not a great passing quarterback. And I think Chandler Morris is ready to play too. So who knows what's going to go on there. I could see a mid-game switch if Dugan struggles. So I really don't have the interest there. Kendre Miller looked good last week, but again, you and I could look good running against SMU. So yeah. And Quentin Johnson, the guy's terrible. Or he's good. He's good. He has athletic ability, but he doesn't do anything. So I'm not probably going to get there on any TCU guys. I just don't, on this kind of slate, I don't think you need to play them.
I mean, the game environment is supposed to be really good because, right, 2 offensive teams. It's Oklahoma's favored by 6.5, right? And you have an over-under of 68.5, which is
Yeah.
humongous. But that being said, like these teams both spread it around. Marvin Mims, we've talked about him in the past. Neither one of us are the biggest fans of this guy. DraftKings is because algorithm, haha. He's explosive. He can have huge games. We've seen him do it once this week, but he only has 24 targets this year. So all this stuff about him becoming the wide receiver one in a Levy offense, like he just still doesn't warrant that price. So tournament play only. Their offense is really good. They rank 4th in PPA overall, 2nd in rush PPA, 7th in line yards. So they're running the ball well, and then passing the ball. I mean, their numbers are really great there as well, 20th in passing PPA. So I think they could get there. TCU's defense isn't really grading out well in anything at all, and they're 125th in passing explosiveness, 39th in coverage. So for some reason, PFF likes their coverage grade, even though they give up a ton of big plays. Don't really understand that, but I really don't understand what PFF does a lot of the time. Have to take their numbers with a grain of salt. So yeah, Oklahoma, you can play a guy as a one-off, but I think the pricing's pretty good here. Farouk, it's worth noticing he's in a full-time role in the slot, which could be worth something down the road. As far as TCU for me, yeah, Johnston only has 16 targets on the year, so I think he's probably going to have an explosive game one of these weeks, Kevin, because he's too athletic not to.
Yeah.
But sitting here trying to tell you when it's going to happen, it's a tournament play, dart throw only, in my opinion. I do think Max Duggan has seized the role at 6.7K. I mean, we just saw Oklahoma get dashed by a dual threat quarterback, and Max Duggan he's a dual threat more than he gets credit for. I mean, this guy's extremely athletic. His numbers aren't always that prolific, but it really wouldn't surprise me. Am I banking on it? Am I making him a core play? Not at all, but tournament play for sure for me. If you want to get a little crazy, the secondary options are not getting there. Tay Barber only has 11 targets. Darius Davis only has 7 targets on the season. So if you're looking at Darius Davis, where he's putting up 16 fantasy points per game, you definitely can't trust that one, in my opinion. Only has 27 pass snaps played all season. Long story short, I think if I'm getting anywhere, I think I could get to Kendre Miller this week, Kevin. We mentioned we liked him last week. We didn't like the price. I think he's a fantastic player. TCU's been running the ball well. They rank 4th in rushing explosiveness. They rank 12th in rushing PPA, going against an Oklahoma defense that is outside the top 60 in pretty much every metric against the run and just got stomped by Kansas State. I think I'm going to talk myself into some Kendrick Miller this week. All right, moving on. We have Michigan versus Iowa. Kevin, I assume you are game stacking this one.
Absolutely. This game you could easily get to 17-14 final. I'm also a little bitter about what JJ did to me last week. It was not pretty. Yeah, this one's going to be tough to play anybody. Corum's a monster and he's a really good price, but again, this game could literally be 17-14 final. It's hard to get in on any of these guys. In Iowa, you couldn't pay me enough to play an Iowa guy ever.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I don't think I'm going to get there, but you could talk yourself into Corum if Donovan Edwards doesn't play because he's getting elite usage. Like he had 30 carries and he could again in this one. And I mean, he for sure could get there. They're 10.5 point favorites with an over under 41.5. Like we've seen uglier things, but I mean, these defenses are like really good, man. Like really, really good. Iowa allows only 5.8 points per game. I really like what they're doing. These teams rank 2nd and 3rd, respectively, in rushing defense. And they also rank 2nd and 3rd in coverage, according to PFF. So it's like, why would you do that? As far as Iowa, I'm not going to play absolutely anybody. Michigan, it's probably Corum only for me.
Yep.
I wanted to see what Sam Laporta's price is. 3.5 for Sam Laporta. That's a good price. Algorithm sucks at tight ends, but I don't think I'm getting there. All right, moving on. Purdue versus Minnesota. DraftKings is broken again. They can't figure out Purdue's pricing. Does that mean they're a must play? Absolutely not. Every time I try to post about this on Twitter, people's brains breaks because they don't know how to use their brains. Use your brains, please. I'm pointing out the algorithm's broken so that you can understand the pricing. It doesn't mean you have to play somebody. It means if you're trying to beat a game, you have to understand the pricing and how it works. The more you understand something, the more likely you are to do better at it. So anyway, the algorithm's broken. Charlie Jones has 52 targets on the year, and he's only 6.4K. Of course, the big news is in this one, Aiden O'Connell, I wouldn't expect to see him play. They're calling him a game time decision. He could play. I read a beat writer say they'd be surprised if he goes in this one. They said last week they were missing their starting quarterback, their starting running back, a wide receiver, a right tackle, a cornerback, and a safety against Florida Atlantic. And he said he doesn't expect any of them to suit up again. So Purdue is very banged up. I guess my question is to you, Kevin. Does the status of O'Connell matter to you? And if so, how much does it matter in regards to playing Charlie Jones?
It I mean, it would help obviously if he played, but it doesn't really matter a ton. The kid that played last week, I mean, he wasn't great, but I think Charlie Jones still had 10 catches, plenty of targets, and at the price, he's still a really good play. So he still can play. It doesn't really matter who's throwing him the football apparently because he just gets peppered with targets.
Yeah, the price is stupid. I mean, if Burton's his quarterback, that's really not cool because you see there. I mean, his numbers went down against a bad Florida Atlantic
Yep.
team, but he still had 2 touchdowns. He still had 9 receptions. It's going to be really hard to miss him. So I don't know if I categorize him as a must play, but if a person is at least $2,000 too cheap, then that's an opportunity. All right. Minnesota's defense, I will say they are grading out like amazing. I don't know if they've played some really bad teams, but they're allowing the fewest yards per game in the entire country. And the second fewest points per game in the entire country. So back to back, we had Iowa allowing 5 point whatever, and then we have Minnesota allowing 6.0. So that's pretty impressive. All right. Looking at the Minnesota side of the ball, the offense has been really good this season. Second in points, predicted points added per play in the entire country. First in passing downs, PPA. First in rushing success rate. Third in passing success rate. Fourth in passing PPA. Their numbers are just insane. Do you think that's going to continue here against Purdue, Kevin?
I do kind of. I think so. I think Minnesota is actually a lot better than I thought they were. I didn't expect them to be. I mean, Tanner Morgan's been there for about 12 years, so he should be seasoned. He should be, he should be decent. But Mo, they feed Mo. Mo's a monster. The dude's just a warrior. So his price is always high. But it seems like his floor is 150 and 2, and his ceiling is 220 and 4. It's just he's crazy. He just gets a ton of usage. So, but overall, they look really good. So can't fault you for Mo, but I don't know that I can get there on the price with the other options this week. And this could be one of those games I've played in a phone booth too, and it could be a 24-17 final. So Big Ten, Big Ten slugfest basically.
Yeah, I think I'm leaning towards this one being lower scoring because Minnesota's defense is grading out really well. Their offense is grading out well, but I think this could be a tough matchup. I mean, Purdue's no juggernaut, but we know Minnesota does want to run the ball. They're throwing the ball more this year. But Chris Ottman-Bell, their number 1 wide receiver, is out for the year, and he led the team. He still is tied for the team lead with 15 targets. So that's a concern. And then Mo Ibrahim's all the way at 9.5K. He does have elite usage, but he's going against a Purdue team that ranks 11th in rushing PPA and 7th in rushing explosiveness. So they've been really good against the rush. That's their strength. I think they should be able to focus on that in this matchup. Mo Ibrahim probably still has a nice day, but for that price, I don't really see how you can get there. So you're telling me Chris Ottman-Bell's out. So who are their top receivers after him? Brown Stevens had 6 targets last week, and then Spanford, their tight end. Of course, he's all the way down at 3.6 because DraftKings tight end. He had 5 targets. So Spanford now is the new leader in targets at 15 on the year, and he's having a decent little season, but I do think there are better options. Last week, Daniel Jackson had 4 targets, and Dylan Wright had 3, all the way down at 4K. I'm not sure I can get there on either of those guys, but they will be probably playing a decent amount. Mo Ibrahim going for touchdown number 41. No, sorry. He already has 41 touchdowns on the ground in his career, Kevin. You think he gets 42 in this matchup?
Oh yeah, he'll get at least 1. He'll probably get 2. But even if he gets 1, even if he gets 150 and 2, he doesn't hit value for that price.
I agree. I think one more thing on the Purdue side I wanted to mention. Payne Durham, their tight end. I think we called him out a few weeks ago. I said this guy put up duds to start the year. I said he could have a big game here because he's hot and cold. He then put up a 29-point performance followed by a 5-point performance. So he is all over the place with backup quarterback, but I think he's their second best receiver right now because the Tyrone Tracy show that I was sure is going to happen is not happening at all. And then TJ Sheffield, who they were playing in the slot part-time, he moved to a full-time outside role last week. So we'll see if that continues, but he's really cheaper than he should be. All right, next we have Illinois, Wisconsin, another Big Ten slugfest. I'm assuming you're game stacking this one as well when you're not game stacking Michigan, Iowa.
Yeah, why don't you do both of them? Throw a crazy lineup out there.
Yeah, not very interesting. Are you getting to anyone on the Illinois side? Chase Brown has been a monster, and Isaiah Williams has been a target hawk. Let's see how many targets Isaiah Williams. He has 38, and the next closest on their team, Pat Bryant, is 18. So he's the only wide receiver on their team. And Chase Brown has just been getting elite usage at 7.5K. He's been getting, 20 totes, no problems, a couple of receptions. Is that enough for you to consider him?
Not really. Wisconsin's D is pretty good. And there's just better options in those prices for me. So I don't think I'll have any Illinois exposure this week.
I played Chase Brown under 21 fantasy points on Prize Picks. I played Tommy DeVito, their quarterback, under 15.5 points on Prize Picks. I don't know where those numbers came from. Some broken robot algorithm thing. Take advantage. If you want all Prize Picks, fantasypoints.com. Okay. Wisconsin's defense hasn't been very good this year, but I think that's going to turn around for obvious reasons. They only rank 103rd in standard down success rate. And passing explosiveness, they've given up a lot. 102 is where they rank in passing explosiveness, and surprisingly 111th in defensive line yards, which is very strange. They're usually really good up front. I think that'll turn around, Kevin. PFF grades them as 90th in tackling, 98th in rush defense. That's not going to last over a full season. They played Ohio State. Those numbers are going to be pretty off. And you could say, well, Illinois runs the ball as good or better than Ohio State. I'd say one, no, they don't. Two, Ohio State's more explosive. They're more dynamic. They're a difficult team to game plan for. Jim Leonard at Wisconsin is one of the best defensive coordinators in the entire world, not just college football, and he'll figure it out. So no Illinois for me. All right, Wisconsin is this simple for me, Kevin. Are you playing Braylon Allen?
Absolutely. Give me some of the Hulk. The Hulk's a monster, and what I liked last week, right? They ran some wild badger, and that's fantasy goodness. So yeah, I'll have a lot of Braylon Allen. The kid's just a beast, and while Illinois, I think they're probably decent defensively ranking wise, but again, they haven't played anybody great either. So I don't think they'll have any answer for Braylon Allen.
Yeah, I'll never talk you off Braylon Allen. It's pretty much that simple to me. Last year, these teams played, and Wisconsin held Illinois to 93 total yards of offense, if you want any idea of how these coaches want this game to be played. I was going to mention that. They're working him even more in the Wildcat this week, so I think we might see even more of that because what are they doing passing the ball? Nothing. Illinois' defense has been pretty good so far, 234 yards per game. That's second in the Big Ten, third in passing defense, fourth in rushing defense in the Big Ten. They're tied for fourth nationally in scoring defense with only 8 points per game. So the third team we've seen allow under 10 yards per game on the slate. So that part's pretty ugly. But yeah, I probably won't have a ton of Braylon, but never going to talk you off. He has elite usage. He's an elite player, and it's really, really that simple for me. All right, Navy versus Air Force. I believe Navy actually won this game in an upset last year. So revenge angle possibly for Air Force. Line surprisingly is only at 14 in favor of Air Force, considering Navy really sucks, and Air Force is pretty good. That's my pick to win the Mountain West. Probably going to have to say that every week until they eventually lose and fall out, and I look stupid, but I like Air Force this year. Over-unders at 37.5. Woof. Can we skip Navy, Kevin?
Yeah, we can absolutely skip Navy.
I'm going to skip them. I just wanted to count out some of these numbers because they're funny. They rank over 120th, so they're bottom 10 in the following categories. PPA overall, success rate, standard downs PPA, standard down success rate, passing down success rate, rushing success rate, passing success rate. I think that's it that I have pulled up. They stink, man. They can't even run the ball well.
And that's what they always have done for the past 30 years, and they can't do it this year.
It's a joke. They're just not doing well. The thing is, they were a joke last year, Kevin, and they beat Air Force. So, when you have two triple option teams that are looking to limit possessions, it's going to be ugly for fantasy, but it also makes it unpredictable. Because if you get one fumble recovery in there, that could really change things. All right, looking at Air Force, I really like Air Force. This offense is really, really, really good. Fifth in PPA, sixth in success rate. They run the ball at a higher clip than any team in the country. They rank seventh in rushing PPA. They're first in passing explosiveness every single year, which is hilarious because when they do pass the ball, they burn the other team. And of course, Navy sucks. They're 109th in coverage, 120th in passing PPA, so 124th in passing explosiveness. Air Force should be able to do whatever they want offensively here until you consider Navy's only strength, their only strength at all is they've actually been pretty good against the run. They're ranked fourth in rushing success rate allowed. Are you getting to Brad Roberts here?
Not for 7K. It's just too high of a price. Obviously he gets a lot of opportunity, and they, like you said, they run the hell out of the ball, and he gets a lot of touchdowns. But 7K in a game script like this, that there's going to be limited possessions, right? Because they just run the ball. So who knows how many times Air Force is going to have the ball? I'm not going to get there on Roberts.
I agree. I assume no one else for you on Air Force.
Nope.
I do want to point out this Air Force team, while Brad Roberts is going off, and like people hate Brad Roberts, like because it was in a Friday slate. I think he was last week. He was 33% owned.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's Brad Roberts, and his price was not, it was 8.4K. It was really high, but it was like what, a 3-game slate? So now I think people are going to overcorrect, realizing they were wrong about Brad Roberts, and they're still concerned about a meniscus injury he had back in March, which I try to tell everybody it's not a concern. It's just their coach. It's coach speak. Anyway, John Eldridge the third, their running back. Absolutely amazing name, first off. I want to shout this guy out. Am I going to play him this week? I'm not so sure. But the revenge angle against a bad Navy team that they're going to want to blow out. John Lee Eldridge the third. He has the highest run grade of any G5 running back with over 30 carries. He's forced 16 missed tackles on only 37 carries, Kevin. So pretty much every other run, he's breaking a tackle. And 13 of his 37 carries, so over 1/3 of his carries, have gone for at least 10 yards. This kid's really good. So they're hard rushing. Like, they have a veteran quarterback, Zeke Daniels. They have a really good running back and a really good fullback. Worth noting, their wide receivers are out. Who knows if they're going to play Kinnaman? I don't think you're going to play a wide receiver anyway.
No.
Yeah, I don't think so. All right. Moving on to a game that's much different than the last one we talked about. One of the games of the week, I guess, if Arkansas keeps it close. Hopefully Arkansas keeps it close. Both for CFF purposes and for viewing purposes and for, not having the same team win every year purposes. But Bama is a 17-point favorite in this one, so not expected to be super close. Arkansas is not playing very well to start the year. They should have won last week, so they're playing good enough, I suppose, but just not quite good enough in the end. And then 60.5 is the total. Looking at Alabama here, you have Bryce Young. He is the cover boy on the video this week. He is also the price king, all the way up at 9.9K. Kevin, are you going to get there with Bryce Young?
No, there's just better. I mean, he's great, and he's going to get you 30. He's probably going to throw for 370, 380, and 4 or 5, but he's just really expensive, and I think you can get similar production at a much lower price, elsewhere on the slate. So I won't get there on Bryce Young. I will get there on one of his receivers, though.
I think I'm going to get there a little bit with Young. I know he's really expensive. The receivers, the pricing is a joke. And then there's a lot of running backs I like in like the 5K range. So I think you could even get to like a Deuce Vaughn, a 5K range, whatever receivers you want, and then Bryce Young fairly easily, especially because I'm glad you mentioned that. His stacking options are the cheapest they've ever been. And Jermaine Burton at 6.8K, I'm a big fan of his work, but he's just not getting the job done. You're not playing Jermaine Burton this week, I don't think. The other secondary stacking options are below 6K, which is absolutely insane for an Alabama wide receiver, especially when they're going against an Arkansas team that's really struggling in the secondary right now. They rank 114th in coverage per PFF. That's below Arkansas State. I was searching Arkansas. They were below Arkansas State. Woof, that's bad, Kevin. They haven't been great against the rush either, 89th. And then, this Arkansas defense isn't playing very well. So what's the receiver you're interested in?
I like Ja'Cory Brooks a lot at 5K. So he had a really big week last week, and the week before, you can tell he's just getting more involved. So a lot of people liked him coming into the year. He didn't do much early, but I think he's coming around, and that price is really good. I don't expect another 32, but I wouldn't be surprised with a 20, and easily hit 4 times value. So I like Brooks. I like Burton, but Brooks, I think you get similar production at a much cheaper price.
Yeah, I agree. I think Burks. I think I'm going to get to some Brooks. He's I'm saying Burks because he absolutely torched Alabama last year. I don't think we're going to see quite that high flying this year, but I think Brooks is a decent play. He's been in the doghouse. That's why he hasn't been producing. He was a starter last year. He played as a true freshman. He was above all the other talented freshmen they brought in. He was above all the freshmen they brought in this year. So shout out to our boy Eric Froton of NBC Sports Edge. Love my guy Froton. He said he was at the combine talking to all the Alabama players, and he does some great work for in the CFF community because he will ask players about guys they played with on the team and who's going to be the next guy up. He said he always makes it a point to ask those questions and get those nuggets that, like, again, people aren't like they're going to ask that in the NFL, but for CFF, there's not a lot of people out there covering it, right? So anyway, he said when he talked to all the Alabama players about who's the next great Alabama wide receiver next season and going forward, he said every single one of them unanimously said Ja'Cory Brooks. So I think that should tell you something. And then when he finally sees the field, he has, what did he have? Over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns last week?
Yeah, he was a beast.
And no one else is stepping up on this team. I mean, Holden's there. Holden's fine at 5.9K. He's whatever, but he's not like an elite talent. He's just there. He could have a nice game. Brooks could be an elite talent. He's a 5-star, and people are naming him as possibly the next great Alabama wide receiver, which means something. Last year, when these two teams played, Bryce Young broke the school passing record with 559 yards. Is he going above that this week, Kevin?
I don't think that high, but I think he's a good bet for 400. You're kind of talking me into him even at his price because
it's just the stacking options, right?
Yeah,
it's cheap.
Yep.
And I do have a lot of respect for Arkansas, so I'm not like saying they're going to get walked over, but like it's Bryce Young. I don't know.
Yeah, and Alabama, they seem content this year with not running the football, right? So they seem content with just letting Young back there. He's got all the time in the world, and he just picks people apart. And then when they do run, it's not even Gibbs right now; it's McClellan. So Gibbs is more of a receiver out of the backfield. So Alabama seems content to just wing it around.
I agree with you. Yeah, McClellan's looked great, man.
Yep,
he's looked really good. So don't pay up for Gibbs. McClellan, you could do crazier things, I suppose. All right, let's move on to the Arkansas side. It's going to be a little tough here. Bama ranks first in the SEC in scoring defense. Another team allowing less than 10 points per game on this slate, Kevin. Oh my God, 7.2 points per game. A lot of that's due to non-con play, of course. They're first in SEC in total defense, first in rushing defense, first in passing defense. This defense looks really good. They rank third in PPA if you're looking at the advanced numbers, fifth in passing PPA, third in line yards, fifth in passing explosiveness, sixth in stuff rate. They're really good in the secondary. They're really good at the defensive line. Arkansas's offense, I like rooting for Arkansas. It's been okay. They run the ball a lot, Kevin. They rank fifth in rush rate. But against this Alabama team, you're expected to be in a deficit against. Like last year, we saw him pull off the upset because Treylon Burks again just went monster numbers, went berserk. I'm not really sure they have the dynamic athlete this week, Kevin. So I know Raheem Sanders is really good running back at 6.1K. I know KJ Jefferson and an over-under total of over 60 with his dual threat ability and his price pretty low. There's some interesting options, but I'm not really sure I'm going to be able to pull the trigger on these guys. Are you going to?
I don't think so. I just think there's better options elsewhere, right? So Rocket Sanders at 6.1 is just too high given the opponent, right? If he's playing somebody else, sure, but not against Alabama. There's guys cheaper in other games that I'd rather play.
Yeah, and one reason Rocket's been so great is because Dominic Johnson, he's basically the co-starter with him, has been out to start the year. And Dominic Johnson finally saw the field last week, and I thought he looks pretty good. He always falls forward. He keeps the chains moving. He's going to be a part of the game plan. So Rockets touches, while they're still going to be pretty good for a team that runs the ball the fifth most in the entire country, they're going to start to go down. Looking at the wide receivers, Hazelwood is a little dinged up. He leads the team, but again, he has only 24 targets. It's just not that much. Matt Landers is their explosive player. He's only at 3.2K, and I think he has a good chance to lead this team in receiving yards. He has 18 targets on the year, so that's a mispricing, but again, not sure I'll get there. All right. Oklahoma State versus Baylor, a rematch of last year's Big 12 championship game. There was not a lot of offense last year when these two teams played each other. There is not expected to be a ton of offense in this one either. Over-under is sitting at 56.5, so a little bit higher than I expected. Personally, Baylor is a 2-point favorite. Let's start on the Oklahoma State side, Kevin. I think there is a fantastic play this week that people need to know about.
Yeah, so I think there's a great play at wide receiver, and I don't mind pairing him with Spencer Sanders. I'm not a big Spencer Sanders fan as a quarterback. I just don't think he's that great, but he's been pretty good this year. The best he's played in his career, I would say. And I think he's 6.5K, which is a great price. And then you can pair him up with Braden Johnson, who's 4.3. He's their number one right now. Everybody, preseason thought Jaden Bray Jaden Bray got hurt, and I don't even know how good Jaden Bray is, but Braden Johnson has shown he's pretty good, and 4.3K is a joke. It's just as you said, it's broken. It's a bad price.
Yeah, I was never on the Bray train. I didn't get a single share of him in the like 35 drafts I did this summer. I don't think I have a single share. But I mean, it's not that I know he sucks. It's just I don't know he's the guy. Braden Johnson looks like the guy. I think he might be the best play on the entire slate this week, to be honest with you. Price wise, he leads the team with 26 targets. Presley is second with 17, and I do like Presley as a player, but if the targets are going to be that low and he's all the way up at 6.9K when he's quite clearly at this point the wide receiver too, Braden Johnson, it's the Mike Gundy scheme. I think 8 of the last 9 years, their wide receiver 1 has been an outside wide receiver, right? We know what they like. That's Braden Johnson. He's a burner. He's going deep. I mentioned it. I think it was last week I mentioned it sometime. I don't know. I talk too much. But I mentioned Baylor's defense. They're really good up front, man. Really good. 8th in rushing success rate. They're always going to be solid. They have that monster. I think his name is EK, who transferred from LSU. I love watching them. They have some linebacker who scored a touchdown even. Their middle linebacker, number 5, I believe. I love watching them up front on both sides of the ball. Their secondary is not very good, man. They lost like 3 or 4 guys in the NFL at Baylor, a team that develops talent. Like we're seeing at Utah with the rush defense, right? Like replacing Devin Lloyd, like teams that are developmental, they just don't have a million 5-stars thrown there. I think it takes a little while to get up to speed. So their secondary has been hit pretty good so far this year. They rank 71st in passing success rate. Somehow PFF grades them as the 21st best team in coverage. I have absolutely no idea what PFF's watching there. Not the same games as I am. So believe PFF if you want to, but I personally, I don't at this point in the season. They're a good coach team. They could get better. I'm not sure I'm going to get there with Spencer Sanders, but that's a great price on him. I really don't hate it at all for a dual threat at 6.5K. But I think Johnson is, I mean, I don't get how you overlook that. All right, looking at Baylor, just a weird offense this year, Kevin. Really weird. They have like 170-pound true freshman running back taking over. Their quarterback, Blake Shapen, took over for a guy who led them to a Big 12 championship last year, and he's been okay. And then the wide receivers are a complete mess. Is there anything you're looking at here?
I do like Richard Reese at 4.9. Like you said, he's a little guy, but he runs really hard. I like what I see out of him, and it seems like they're committed to him. It looks like he's going to be their main back. I mean, they're in conference play. They're in tough games, and he's getting the carries. So I don't mind Reese at 4.9, but I can't play anyone else. Like you said, the receivers are a mess, and Shapen just doesn't do anything fantasy wise. So
did you know Blake Shapen was the #1 baseball recruit in the state of Louisiana as a high schooler?
Nope.
Well, there you go. Home run threat. I don't know. These quarterbacks, like these, I don't want to call them random. I think Shapen might be pretty good, but like when they talk about Holton Allers seeing Bigfoot and Holton Allers' Little League career and like right, you're just like, there's not really much else to talk about with some of these guys. I think it's pretty funny. So anyway, yeah, he was a stud. I think Monterey Baldwin, like I think this team is really hurting for receiving options. I think it's part of what's going on here. He was out for a week or two and he came back last week and I think he's their best receiver, but he only played 16 snaps. I don't know if he's still a little banged up. I think honestly, their best wide receiver might be Ben Sims, the tight end. But like, are you going to trust the tight end? I don't know. Price is really cheap. I don't really think I'm going to play anything on Baylor, to be honest with you. My issue here, Kevin, is I don't know how good the Oklahoma State defense is because they were amazing last year. Absolutely amazing. And then this year, Jim Knowles left for Ohio State, and we already see Ohio State looks very, very, very much improved on that side of the ball. I think the stats are skewed against garbage time and CM against Central Michigan. I hear a lot of people talking, well, Central Michigan put up points on Oklahoma State. Those were Oklahoma State's backups. They were not shy. Again, Spencer Sanders had like 40 fantasy points in a quarter and a half. They put in the backups. Central Michigan torched them with their starters still in. Whatever. Who really cares? I don't know. But their stats are really bad. They're bad against the run. 111th in rushing explosiveness. So Richard Reese, sure, he could break a big one. And then they're 108th in passing PPA, 120th in passing explosiveness, giving up a ton of explosive plays. I don't think this Baylor offense is explosive whatsoever. So I wouldn't be surprised if that stops this week. All right, moving on. We have Iowa State versus Kansas, Kevin. Kansas, undefeated Kansas.
It's a crazy world we're living in.
Undefeated Kansas. This is their most wins in a season since 2009 already. And it's only 4 games in the year. Jalen Daniels is catching a lot of Heisman tickets. Are you betting on Jalen Daniels to win the Heisman?
No, because it's still Kansas and, they haven't hit conference play. So, but heck of a story and really good fantasy wise because he's a really good runner, and they put up points. So yeah, I don't mind him fantasy wise, but I don't think he's going to take home the Heisman.
All right, so let's stay there. Yeah, I agree with you. I agree. I'm rooting for Kansas. I like Kansas. There's a reason they're the home team and they're an underdog here to Iowa State, who lost to Baylor last week. It's we need to see a little more. I love Lance Leipold. We need to see a little more. The offense is very, very fun, so we want to see more. Okay. Iowa State's a 3-point favorite in this one. Over-unders at 58.5. I think I'm going to have some plays here, Kevin. I think I'm going to have some plays here. What team do you think I'm targeting? I'll let you guess.
My guess is you're going to target Iowa State.
Yeah. Are you opposite me?
No. So the only thing I like on Kansas is I don't mind Daniels at 7K, because I think it's a really good price, and whatever they do, he's involved with. So I don't mind the play. But if as for the game, I actually like all three skill positions at the Iowa State. I think Decker's at 5.8 is a really good play. Kansas is not very good against the pass. Obviously, you can stack him with Hutchinson. Hutchinson's a target monster. He had a bit of a down week last week for his standards, but again, he probably gets there. And then I love Jarrell Brock at 5.4. Love him. So yeah.
Yeah, I actually agree. I'm going to have a lot of all three of these guys. I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do in lineups. Like, do I really play all three in some lineups? Maybe. But yeah, I think stacking Deckers and Hutchinson makes a lot of sense. Deckers can run a little bit. Kansas's defense is not good, and their offense might be good enough to score some points here on the other side. They rank 105th in PPA, and they're a 4-0 team. So that tells you about all you need to know about how they've been winning games. Another example of how you can't trust PFF's numbers, they have Kansas as the 14th ranked rushing defense in the entire nation and the third best tackling team in the entire nation. I don't understand where they got that. I've been watching them. They don't look any good at anything on defense. And they rank 88th in rushing PPA and 74th in rushing success rate. So I don't get it. Hopefully people are just blindly staring at those numbers. I like Jarrell Brock. He hasn't gotten the best start to the season. He's not a very explosive player, but this is a good game environment, I believe. And he's getting a decent amount of usage. And he's even being used in the receiving game. Is he Breece Hall? No. Is he going to get Breece Hall's workload? Not quite, but it's still going to be pretty healthy in my opinion. So yeah, Hutchinson's a target hog. I'm kind of hoping people hop off of him after his, I guess, down week. He still got 16 points, right? So I think he's going to be a target hog all season. Kansas is going to be overmatched. I don't hate it at all. Definitely don't hate any of those plays. Yeah, Kansas is ugly in my opinion because, their offense is not ugly. It's beautiful, but it's ugly from a fantasy perspective because they split the rushing workload between Devin Neal at 4.9K and then Daniel Highshaw at 3.7K. Highshaw, they really like this kid. He's gotten double-digit carries, but again, like, is he going to break off a 73-yard receiving touchdown against Iowa State? Probably not. Iowa State has a good defense. They rank 13th in PPA. So far this season. So I'm not going to get there. And then the receivers, I don't play Kansas receivers. Luke Grimm and Lawrence Arnold. I think they call him LJ Arnold is what the broadcast was calling him. But anyway, they just don't see enough targets. They both are tied with 19 this year. Anything else on those two?
Nope.
All right, let's move on here. Let's go to Wake versus Florida State. This is probably the most difficult one to talk about. So I'm not going to talk like I know anything for certainty here because this is one of the ones, I mean, it's Florida State, Florida, in the state of Florida. Hurricane Ian. They said they're playing the game as scheduled, so who knows? I looked up the weather right now. It didn't look too bad. It said like 14-mile-an-hour winds. That could obviously totally change. You have to monitor the weather very closely if you're going to play a player in this game. Is Florida State not moving this game, Kevin? Do you think I'm being a conspiracy theorist? Because if there are winds, that clearly would benefit one team there, that being the home team, and not the team that really wants to throw the ball all over the yard.
I can see some logic in that for sure. Yeah.
I don't see how we can really talk about Wake until closer to game time here, Kevin. Like, how can we recommend Sam Hartman if there's a chance there's hurricane winds?
Right. You can't. I mean, in a perfect world without the wind, obviously Hartman's a great play, and so is our guy at 3K receiving wise. But if it's going to be those kind of wins, it doesn't matter who you play, right? So, but Banks at 3K could be a great play, but you're gonna have to make that call come Saturday.
Yeah, I agree. I was surprised at Florida State's numbers. They aren't good because they look like they've been playing well. but their defensive numbers are not good. They rank outside the top 100 in PPA, and yeah, it's because they haven't faced a super easy non-con schedule. But 96 in success rate overall, 109th against the rushing PPA. That's really bad. You take a closer look, like they held BC to 235 yards, but BC might be a bottom 10 team in the country. Like they look terrible.
Yeah, they're awful.
They held LSU to 348 yards, but that's pretty good. But LSU, I don't know, like they don't look great offensively, and they got going towards the end of the game. And then Louisville almost dropped 600 yards on them. So it's like it's really that one Louisville game that's holding them back here. And Wake Forest probably has a better offense than Louisville in the vacuum. So it's tough for me to read. I could see playing a lot of Wake this week. But yeah, it's a letdown after the Clemson, and it's possibly a hurricane. I don't know here. I just want to count out the pass snaps because I think the Wake because they can't run the ball. I think the Wake wide receivers are obviously the interesting one here. So looking at targets this year, A.T. Perry, he hasn't been cutting it. Very disappointing. He still leads the team with 32 targets. And then Morin, the slot guy, has 21. And then Donovan Green, the outside receiver, has 20. And Banks is still fourth on the team with 19 targets. However, if you look at the snap count over the last 2 weeks, Perry leads the way with 72, but it's actually Banks who's second with 64, Green with 53, Morin with 55, and then Williams with 37. So they're rotating the outside receivers, but that's kind of what Wake does. I think Banks, basically, he's going to be on the field a decent amount, and he's 3-point K. He's flat man, and he caught 4 touchdowns for an offense that's probably going to score like 40 points per game. So if the weather's nice, Banks is pretty much a must play, right? Yeah. If it is.
Yep.
All right. Florida State, how are you approaching Florida State? Again, difficult to approach them. So is it kind of the same way as Wake, just wait and see?
No, because as you said, Florida State, Travis isn't a great passer, and they really like to run the football. So I don't think I'll get there on Travis because his price is way too high, just way too high. I don't know that I'll get there on Trayshawn Ward either at 6.2. The guy I actually like, he's MINN price, Trey Benson, the Oregon transfer. He's 3K, and if you look at the stats, they both get about 10, 12 carries a game. So I like that a lot for 3K.
It's like we're in the bizarro world here because Trey Benson was like priced above Trayshawn Ward to start the year. And I say, guys, Trayshawn Ward's like the starter. They're going to split carries, but Trayshawn Ward's going to get more. And then like Benson, for some reason in Fantrax and season long leagues, his ADP was like that of like an 8th round player or something. And it's like, who's drafting Trey Benson? Is that a mistake? And now all of a sudden he's MINN priced. So it's like the total opposite of what it's been all year. So it's really weird, but yeah, he shouldn't be MINN priced. I mean, this guy's PFF grades are outstanding. Like he's breaking a lot of runs. He's breaking a lot of tackles. He's an explosive player. He may only get 10 carries, but if it's a hurricane, like he's probably getting more than 10 carries. So yeah, if this is full hurricane, I'm going full Hurricane Benson. All right. Oh, by the way, Wake secondary looks really bad. So if it's not a hurricane, I guess you could play Johnny Wilson at 5.5K, but it's not going to be me. Too much risk. All right, moving on. Michigan State versus Maryland. Does Michigan State suck, Kevin? Let's start with that. Do they suck this year?
They do. They're a lot worse than I expected. Mel Tucker looked great last year. They looked really good, and this year they look awful. They look lost. That said, I think this is a bit of a bounce back for them. I actually really like Jaden Reed this week. He's been a huge disappointment fantasy-wise in DFS and in season long. But I think this is a get well week. He came back last week from injury and actually played a lot. Didn't have a great stat line, but he played a lot and he looked healthy. So Maryland's awful. I love playing guys against Maryland. So I actually think Jaden Reed is a really good play. He's 6K, so he's not crazy expensive, and I think he might be overlooked. I think he might be a low-owned option in GPPs.
I think I agree with you. He's been banged up. Like they weren't sure he was going to play last week, and this guy's a warrior. I really like Jaden Reed. So, yeah, Maryland's defense looked all right last week, but is that going to continue every week? Is it a letdown spot? Like no one, if you believe in Maryland, if you have confidence in Maryland, I don't know what you're smoking. I think they're an all right team. They're favored against Michigan State by over a touchdown, and the over-under is 59.5. So, like, I see it, but yeah, I agree there. All right, let's count out some because we're not playing the running backs on Michigan State, are we, Kevin?
No, nope.
Yeah, PFF grades him 5th in the entire nation in run blocking. So PFF, so I'm just going to keep calling them out until they do a better job on some of these, because people are calling out these numbers like they mean something. How is that possible? Like, the entire coaching staff's calling out the offensive line. All the beat writers are talking about how they need to improve there. You watch the games and it's obvious. They're questioning the team's effort. Their offensive line has been playing so bad, and yet PFF thinks they're number 5 in the country.
Yeah.
I don't get it. 97th in rush rate. They haven't been running the ball a lot. 66th in rushing success rate. Haven't been running it well. And they're splitting carries between Berger and Broussard. Peyton Thorne, we're not playing Peyton Thorne, I don't think. Keon Coleman at 4.2 is still too cheap. He has 35 targets this season. A lot of that's due to Reed being out. So I think Reed's the top guy when he's healthy, but that's too cheap for Keon Coleman, in my opinion. All right, turning things over to Maryland. Potentially some interest here for us, Kevin, because Michigan State's defense is pretty bad. They rank 115th against the pass PPA, 114th in passing success rate, and 88th in PPA overall. So Michigan State's really not good defensively. Are you targeting anyone on the Maryland side?
I'd like to, but I just don't know that I'm going to get there. I generally don't play Tua. He usually has big games against awful teams, and then when you do play him, he craps the bed. So, plus he's a game time decision. He got banged up last week, took a big hit. So I don't think I'll get there. Raheem Jarrett, one of his wideouts, is also banged up. I don't know that he's going to play. I love Dante Demas, but he's a shell of his former self right now. Watching him play is painful, man. It's painful.
It's so sad. So
yeah.
sad.
He just doesn't have it right now. So while they're going to score points, I don't know where it comes from, and I don't think I'm going to get there. I just don't know how they're going to do it.
I wish Talia wasn't injured. It sounds like he's got some injured ribs. I think he's going to play. I'll probably play him a little bit. My issue, Kevin, is I agree. I don't know who I'm going to stack him with. So playing Tua with no stack. I guess the wide receivers are so good on the slate. Maybe I'll play Tua naked. Hashtag Tua naked. But I don't know. Yeah, I don't really like the receiving options. I mean, Jarrett's first on the team, and he only has 23 targets. Deitch's their tight end. Again, I just really like Deitch's, this tight end. I'm going to keep calling him out. He's 3.5K, and he has 19 targets. But again, there's better options, I suppose. Jones has 18, and Demas only has 15, so he's priced way too high. Roman Hembry, this freshman, I think he's a redshirt freshman, I believe. Running back. They usually don't have a workhorse running back, but this guy's been really good. Michigan State's better against the rush. They rank 9th in rushing PPA, so I don't even think I can play Hembry. And it is worth pointing out that he had 18 snaps last week compared to Littleton's 10, and they like giving Littleton goal line carries. So I think that's going to even talk me off Hembry. So again, I kind of want to like this spot for Maryland, but I agree with you. Yeah. It's hard to see where it's coming from. So tournaments only for sure. All right, moving on. Last and certainly least, we have the Jimbo Fisher coach, Texas A&M Aggies. They have enough talent to win games. They do not have good enough coaching to make it pretty. They do not have a good enough game plan to get into the end zone. They've only scored 11 touchdowns this year, Kevin. For a team with all 5 stars, that's pretty incredible. And 2 of those touchdowns have been by the defense, so only 9 offensive touchdowns. Okay, tell me why this team sucks and why Devin Achane is the only player who doesn't suck.
You pretty much nailed it. The team does suck. Their quarterbacks suck. Their wide receivers are not good. Anis Smith he's out for the year. Evan Stewart, everybody loves him as a stud freshman, but they just don't throw it well. And Achane is their offense, and he's heating up. So, and his price is really good, 6.3. That's a really good price.
Sure is.
So yeah. Devin Achane's the only thing I'm interested in on A&M.
It's a good price. I might play some Achane. I might do it. Yeah, the wide receivers. I mean, Evan Stewart at 3.6. He's really explosive, so he's always a tournament guy. And now I think he's the clear number 1 guy. Like looking at the snap counts after Smith went down, because Smith was really impressing me this season. But he was the only guy with a full-time role, and then Moose Muhammad. He played 23 snaps, had 1 target, no catches, so not playing Moose. And then Chris Marshall is a true freshman who was described in the recruiting process as someone who could be good down the line, but is very raw. So Yikes. I think they're going to lean on the rushing attack. Mississippi State does have, and they're good against the pass. Mississippi State is underrated defensively. I think they are good. And, but they haven't been great against the rush. They rank 93rd in rushing explosiveness. If you rank 93rd in rushing explosiveness and you're going against A-Chain, who I heard described as, hold on, I wrote it down because I wanted to use this phrase for him. I will use this phrase every time I mention him. They called him a talented speed merchant. That's what he is. Yep. A talented speed merchant. All right. What's up with the Mississippi State pricing?
I don't know. I don't really understand how Will Rogers is 6.6 and Ducking is 4.7. I don't get it. You know, the way they price the Mississippi State wide receivers is just it's awful. Why are Harvey and Ra Thomas ahead of Ducking? I don't get it.
I don't understand. Ducking was a guy, again, I had circled. He's taken over Mekhi Polk's role last year. Mekhi Polk had triple-digit receptions. Is Ducking Mekhi Polk? I don't know, but Mekhi Polk came out of nowhere when he came out of nowhere, right? Like, he was at Cal doing nothing because that's what Cal's offense does, unless they play Arizona and then they run for 4 million yards. I think Ducking's one of the best options on the slate. I think he's a little more volatile than some of the guys we've called out, so I think he's more of a tournament play. But he's been pretty much their only full-time wide receiver. He has 165 pass snaps. He's been pretty much every pass snap this season. In second's Austin Williams with 166. But Austin Williams is not the player of Caleb Ducking, not even close. And then Harvey, Ledietrich, Griffin, those guys are all rotating. Harvey plays in the slot. And then Wally, the guy we all thought was probably locked into a role in the slot, he's only seen 14 targets this year. So I think it's all lining up. They're going to throw the ball 40, 45 times. I think it's the tempo in this one probably is not going to be great, right? Because A&M's going to be running the ball a lot. But again, if you're 6.6K and you're throwing the ball 50 times, it's not hard to hit value whatsoever. So I don't think he's a must play, but I really like Will Rogers. You can very easily stack him with Caleb Ducking. As far as the running backs go, I probably won't get there. Dylan Johnson has been playing the RB1 role, but then Jo'quavious Marks is finally coming back this week. He's probably a pretty cheap play in cash games. I would usually at 5.2K in cash games, I would recommend him because he gets so many catches, but sounds like he's banged up. He may not play. I don't know if he plays his usual role. All right. So that's the slate. The wide receivers we were talking about, Kevin, who are the ones, if people are just skipping to the end and they're saying, okay, that was a lot of info. Who you guys said there were some easy wide receivers. Can we refresh the audience who we were talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I think you got to look at Ducking at 4.7. You got to look at Braden Johnson at 4.3. Really like Jakari Brooks at 5K. I think
Banks at 3K.
Yeah, Banks at 3K. Yep. Miles Price at 5.4K is a really good price. So there's a lot in that range that you just don't really need to pay up. I don't think. Yeah. So I'd say those four.
You can easily play those four in that range, and you can easily play three if you don't like one of them. Pay up for one of the other guys. And Charlie Jones at 6.4K easily slots in. I mean, 6.4K is not expensive. I mean, that's pretty much the average player you're allotted, right?
Yep.
And then Hutchinson, you can pay up for him if you want to. I think it's fairly simple at wide receiver. At RB, again, you can easily pay up. I just don't really love the pay up options. I guess you have two elite players in Braylon Allen and Mo Ibrahim, but neither one has a good matchup. Neither one really has a ton of PPR upside. It's kind of ugly at running back. Do you have a strong take on how you're approaching running back yet, or still?
Yeah, I will. I won't have any Mo. He's just too expensive. I will have some Braylon Allen just because I think he gets there on volume, and I don't think Illinois is as good against the run as they've shown. But I like some of the lower price guys like Brock. I do like the kid from Baylor at 4.9. But there's I
like that range. Yeah. I think I want to live in that range, the 5K range, if able. Maybe one pay up guy, but I think a lot of this 5K range, and a lot of that depends. Again, Hurricane news, Judkins and Zach Evans news, but the 5K range is looking very juicy.
Yep.
Quarterback is really ugly this week, Kevin.
Yeah, again, I like a lot of the lower guys. I love Will Rogers at 6.6. I actually like Spencer Sanders at 6.5. Decker at 5.8. So I like a lot of the lower guys. I just I don't think I'll get there on. I'm probably going to have to get there at least on one lineup on Bryce Young. Dylan Gabriel's really expensive at 9.3. Jordan Travis, I want no part of at that price. I do like Sam Hartman, but if there's all those wins, then I'm not going to pay 8.4 for him. So it's just a really weird week. The pay up options, in my opinion, overall are not great.
I agree. I think it's an uglier slate. So have to get a little bit creative, right? Finding that big score.
Yeah.
I think the wide receivers will get you there. It's just there's probably going to be a quarterback or a running back I play that I'm not 100% on, but thus is a tournament. In cash, just go with the volume. There's plenty of volume. Just chase it. All right, Kevin, another good week. Any final thoughts before we sign off?
Just, this is the week to watch the weather. That's going to control a lot of this. So just watch the wind, rain, as long as it's just, as long as it's not a deluge, you'll be all right. But the wind is key. And I think that's going to play a lot of, have a lot to do with how this slate plays out.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to be weird details this week, right? It's not figuring out the perfect lineup. It's figuring out the perfect situations.
Yep.
All right. Good stuff, Kevin. Thanks for joining me as always. Thank you guys for tuning in. Daily Bread Media on YouTube. Following my stuff. Props at Fantasy Points. CFF at Debbie Watch. Give me one of my CFF write-ups. Off-season content. All that good stuff. Debbie Watch is the place to go. All right. Signing off. See you guys next week.